Hi guys, welcome back to the course. Today in this video we're going to be going through job qualification or a briefing sheet, whatever you want to call it. I've always called it a job qualification sheet, but some people call it a briefing sheet. But anyway, we're going to jump straight into it. Obviously this is a really important part of the job, alongside candidate qualification. Like it's the same with a job. If you don't qualify it properly, it can cause you tons of issues down the line, and you're much better off educating your client to let them know that if you just spend an extra 5 or 10 minutes on this sheet, it can save you like hours of fuss moving forward. But also you want to make sure as well that you're not just an order taker, right? So this part of the process, you're not just qualifying the job and then you can definitely work the job. You need to look at this like a consultation, and you're trying to understand if this job is worth your time. It's really, really important you think about that, because a lot of people just go into job qualification calls and they're so excited because they're like, oh, I've got a job on, especially if their KPIs are like they've got to bring on jobs and they're not very good at BD or whatever, and it's quite a rare opportunity to get a job on. It's quite exciting, and they'll just jump into it, they'll rush through it, they'll take a crappy job on, and then a lot of time they can end up wasting their time. So you really need to look at it from a consultation perspective. Like, I don't know if I'm going to work this job yet. I need to go through this role with you to see if it's worth my time, to see if the role's fillable. But also, I need to understand any sort of issues that you've got, and how am I going to help you fix this role. Like, if it's not a fillable role, you need to stand up and consult them on it. You need to let them know if the salary is not very good. You need to let them know if they need to offer better benefits. It's really, really important. Most recruiters don't. And I've worked with so many companies where they're like, oh, I just don't know why we can't fill it. It's been live 3 months. We've got 4 agencies on it, and I'm like, well, what you're paying is 20 grand below budget, or what you're looking for just isn't feasible, or your benefits are terrible. Like, no, of course, no one's going to work for you. You need to increase those. So you need to look at it like a consultant. So there's a mindset shift first of all. If you don't do that already, what we're going to do is just going to go through each bit. Step by step. This form, as with the candidate qualification form, it's based on my last 6 years' experience. I've moved everything into a very specific order, so you need to make sure you ask things in the right order. If you start jumping around, it's not going to make any sense, and it won't flow either. So please make sure that you take control of the call. A little tip of taking control of the call as well. So first of all, you want to make sure they've got at least half an hour, because this is going to take you about 20-25 minutes. Then you want to give a bit of breathing space as well. But also, you want to basically lay out the agenda. So you could even send them this form if you wanted to, I suppose. But what I always do is I literally start the meeting with, right, just to confirm, how long do you have for this call? If they've only got like 15 minutes, then you'd be like, okay, cool, I'm going to have to run through this pretty quickly, and then I'll send you over any questions that we don't have time to answer, because they need to get answered. But at least then you know straight away how much time they've got and how quickly you need to run through things. You don't want to waste, 5-10 minutes chatting, and then you've only got 5 minutes to run through the role, because a lot of hiring managers don't know what sort of detail goes into this, especially if they're working with rubbish agencies, and those agencies just take 5 minutes to qualify a job. They just think that's normal, so you need to let them know it isn't. But basically, you just want to run through like the agenda. So you want to go, look, I'm just going to go through some very basic details first of all, like the reason for the role, obviously the salary and stuff like that. Then we'll go through the technical side of things. Then we've got a couple other extra questions, and then about the interview process. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. And then that will just set their expectation for the structure of the call. So obviously you're going to go through the role. Some of this you can fill out beforehand. You might have the information before, like you might get sent the job spec before the call and that sort of stuff. So feel free to just fill some of it out for reference. But basically, obviously you've got the company here, the job title. With the job title, bit of a weird one, but ask if it's flexible. Because a lot of people, like for example, if the role's like a senior or lead role, but it's not senior or lead, a lot of people get funny about that. Like I've actually had people like almost turn down jobs because it didn't say senior or lead on the title. So just ask, is that flexible? Or also, some companies give weird job titles as well. And basically like the job title doesn't reflect the actual job. And you're going to really struggle to attract people if you have to use that job title. So yeah, a lot of the time I end up using a different job title. Like I'll give an example. So one of my clients was looking for a DevOps engineer, but they were advertising it as an operations engineer. I don't know why. I told them that's not what it was. So I ended up marketing it as a DevOps engineer. Because if I'd done an operations engineer, I just wouldn't have found the candidates I needed to find. So make sure you consult on that. And you can pretty much consult on every single question you ask, by the way, guys. Like, don't be afraid to like push the limits. You want to pretty much try and stretch everything, try and make everything feasible, like test the water with everything you can, because you don't want to just rattle through, ask the questions and then they answer. And I'll give you some examples later on in this video. But no, so to kick things off in terms of this section, so we've got the reason for the role. Obviously, you just want to find out, if someone's quit. If someone's quit, you need to ask about the culture. What was the issue there? Do they have a lot of people leave, that sort of thing, or is it just growth? And then you could even ask about any sort of funding they've had, which could lead to more growth and more opportunities for you to recruit for them. Urgency of the role, again, pretty obvious. You obviously need to know how much time you're going to spend on it. Like, some companies will just give you a role and, they're not actually looking to hire it for a good couple of months. But some of them will say, I needed it yesterday, which can also cause its own issues. But you just need to basically consult with them around how realistic the time frame is. And you should hopefully know this based on your market, but even if you don't, just try and buy yourself a few extra weeks regardless. Like, for example, if they're looking for a Python developer and they're like, we're looking to hire someone, ideally looking to make an offer in the next 2 to 3 weeks, and I'll say to them, like, it's not realistic. Like, I'll obviously strive to do that, but realistically it's going to take me 2 months to find this person based on your salary or based on the market or whatever. Just try and buy yourself as much time as possible. The current situation with the role as well, again, super important. Some people don't ask this. It drives me nuts. But, you need to ask if they've got any interviews booked in at the moment. Even if they say they're working exclusively with you, they might have had a candidate spec'd in that they're interviewing. They might have a referral. They might not have gone out to their referrals yet. You need to make sure they go out to their referrals beforehand, because the last thing you want to do is have a few candidates in process, work the role for a few weeks, and then the CTO knows his mate who's actually looking for a job and he's perfect. That's happened to me a few times. It's so infuriating. So make sure you ask them exactly what they've done so far. Ask them to go out to their network before they use you, and just say, I won't kick off the search until you've asked your network, because I need to make sure this role is sitting directly with me, because ideally you're working this exclusively, right? And obviously as well, you need to know if you are working up against other agencies. Try not to, but if you have to, just make sure that you fully understand what the other agencies have done, how long they've had the role, how many CVs they've submitted, how many interviews they've had. Just really go into the detail, because there's a lot of problems that could arise from that. You could be like, well, hang on a minute, why have they sent 10 CVs and they had one interview? Like, are you guys picky, or like, what's the problem here? Again, you're just trying to delve deep into the role and find out what the pain points are. Any direct applications, have you reached out to your network yet? Like I said, that's just really important. But direct applications as well, you need to just, it's good to understand how they're recruiting at the moment. Like, are they advertising actively? Is there a chance that someone could apply directly and usurp you? Ideally, again, you want to be working exclusively retained, so they shouldn't be looking at all in the ideal world, but they might be. So it's good for you to understand that, so you can manage your time and obviously manage your expectations as well. And obviously how many other agencies are working it. It's pretty simple. Do they offer sponsorship? It's always worth asking, just in case they do, especially for like Python roles, DevOps roles, hard to find roles, data scientists, that sort of stuff. Just good to know. Most companies won't, but it's just good to know and understand. Moving on to the next section. So obviously you've got the salary banding. So, for example, you want to get what the banding is, say 50 to 55. And your question should always be, as a follow-up, okay, cool. So you say 55 is your top end. Is that the absolute top end? And they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's the most we're paying. Okay, cool. So if I found you the most perfect candidate in the world who you absolutely love culturally and technically, but they're looking for 58 or 60, are they just not worth sending then? And then usually they'll say, well, yeah, definitely send them. Okay, cool. You want to plant that seed, basically, and really find out what the budget is. Because the budget is very rarely the budget. They usually have the ability to reallocate funds into a different role. Like, they can take a couple of grand off one role in the recruitment plan to then move it across to another role if they need to. But they obviously don't want to tell you this, really, because they want you to find them cheap candidates and they don't necessarily understand how it works. Benefits and holidays as well, like again, just sort of basic stuff really, but that can be really important. Understand what their annual leave is, the healthcare, the pension, how the pension works. Just think about the benefits and try and delve deep into each benefit. For example, if someone says they do 28 days holiday, you need to check, like, is that 28 days plus bank holidays or including? If they do healthcare, like what level of healthcare is that? Like, is it the very basic version, or do they get like a decent amount? Who's it with? Ideally, you can find out what the pension split is. That sort of stuff. You just want to try and find out as much info as possible, because that's the type of stuff the candidates will care about. In terms of the size of the specific team they're going to be working with, so it's pretty easy to find the size of the company on LinkedIn, but try and find out how big the team is. Like, if they're a front-end engineer, how big is a front-end engineer team? Are they coming in as the only person, or is there a massive team of 15? Just because the engineering team as a whole is 25 doesn't mean they've got many front-end engineers, etc. So just be specific around that. Working hours, very, very basic, but it can bite you in the arse a little bit, because some people just will not work more than 35 hours or 37 hours a week. They just won't. And if they find out at a job offer stage that the job's 40 hours a week, they just won't do it. Like, I've had people turn down jobs before because of that. It's mad, in my opinion, but it does happen. So you just need to be careful around that. Flexible working, work from home policy. Obviously, again, just find out the details. How does a flexible working work? How does a work from home policy work? How often do they have to come into the office? Just find out the details around. Just ask some good open questions around that. Just like, what's the situation with the work from home policy? How does it work? Just leave it open ended and let them talk to you about it and how flexible they actually are. Because again, in current days, it's really important. Now we get onto the technical side of things. So hopefully you've already got the job spec, so you can sort of get an understanding of what they're looking for from a high level. But basically, you just want to ask them, first of all, like, what's the must-haves that they need on their CV? Like, I always try and split it between the essentials and the desired. It's quite an easy way to do it. And then obviously you want to find out, are the desired actually essentials? Delve into it a bit deeper. But with tech, for example, I'm going to assume you work in tech and some sort of development recruitment position. You want to find out what the programming language is. Would they consider other languages? Like, a lot of companies nowadays will consider Python for Java or Java for Python roles, or again, it just goes back to, like, you're trying to make this as fillable as possible. You're trying to open their horizons up as wide as possible and try to get them to be as flexible as possible. So with the cloud tech, we're looking for AWS. Okay, cool, but would you consider Azure or GCP experience? Would you even consider experience with AWS on personal projects? Again, just trying to get them to flex. Other tech tools and experience needed. So there's always some stuff that they don't mention to you. They think you'll just take as read, but they actually need it. Like CI/CD tools, for example, like Jenkins. Do they need Jenkins experience? Do they need experience setting up a CI/CD pipeline? With a test role, like, do they need experience setting up a test automation framework from scratch? That sort of stuff. Like, just try and think outside the box and just ask. You can even just ask, like, is there anything else I actually need to know about this role from a technical perspective? Like, anything you really need to see on a CV or, see in a personal project outside of what you've already told me. Operating system as well. Again, some people don't mention this or are super picky. Like, they won't tell you that they only work with Linux and they only accept Linux experience. But on the flip side, like, some people will be looking for Linux people, but they will accept Windows experience. They accept Mac experience. So just get them to understand, where the limits lie, because that can really help your search and narrow down the right people. And leadership and mentoring experience as well. So again, you just want to sort of go into the specifics around what they actually need. Like, they need leadership experience. What does that mean? Like, do they need experience doing one-to-ones? Do they need experience doing reports? Do they need experience actually leading a team, like, by themselves? Do they need experience recruiting, planning projects, that sort of stuff? Like, what do you actually need from a leadership perspective? Very, very important for senior and lead roles, because again, I've had people who are very, very good senior engineers who didn't quite have that lead experience. And a lot of senior roles, like, have different expectations. So one senior could just be fully hands-on, and they just don't expect them to really do anything apart from like a little bit of mentoring juniors. And the other senior by job title could pretty much just be a lead, and they'd be doing like planning and all sorts. So just go into the specifics. Seniority level and minimum years experience. This is so subjective. Like, some people don't class anyone senior until they've been at the company like 7 years. Some companies, if they're good enough, they'll class them as a senior for like 2 to 3 years. Again, you just need to understand what that means, and what they're actually looking for from a senior. Like, they say, oh, we're looking for a senior, and you'd be like, okay, cool, how many years of experience? Probably 2. It's like, okay, cool, so not really a senior then. You're looking for like a junior to mid. Just trying to open them up and fully understand exactly what they're looking for, and how you have to cut your search. Because a lot of people, like, the client will say to another agency who hasn't done their job properly, they'll be like, oh, I'm looking for a senior, and they'll be like, okay, cool, well, that's 8 years experience, let's say, yeah? So they only look for people with 8 years experience. They'll actually reject people with 5 years experience because they don't think they'll even get through the door for an interview. And in 4 weeks' time, 6 weeks' time, they'll have a catch-up and they'll be like, oh, I can't find anyone. And they'll be like, oh, well, we're only looking for like 3-4 years plus. It's like, okay, cool, well, we've now wasted a month. So again, just be specific around that. Projects they're working on, it's just good for a lot of roles, like especially like front-end roles and back-end roles. What are you actually going to be coming in to do for the job? Like, what are you actually going to be doing when you start? So that's a good question to ask. Like, if they start next week, like, what are they actually going to be doing? What are they going to be working on? What products are they going to be working on? What services? What's actually going on? What's going on in 3 months and 6 months? What's the roadmap look like? Obviously, they can talk them through this in an interview, but if you can talk about that just a little bit, you can be like, look, this is what the next 6 months look like. You can really turn a lot of candidates, and they'll be interested. And you also look a lot more competent and professional as well. Like, they trust you a lot more because you really know the company inside out. Like, you really want to try and understand the company as much as understand the role as much as like an internal recruiter would, someone who's like there all the time. That's pretty much the goal of this. So you want all the information you can get. And also you can use this in like LinkedIn messages as well, and reach outs, like email, that you can use it as sort of like hooks. Like, if they've got a really cool AI powered project coming up in the next few months, you can use that as a hook to like, oh, this is what you'll be working on in the next few months. I saw a job ad recently where they laid out the next 3, 6 and 12 months, and it had really good response rate. So stuff like that as well really helps, just to let the people know what they're going to be in for and what to look forward to as well. Special questions to ask candidates during screening. You can literally just ask to say, like, are there any questions that you'd probably ask at first stage anyway that I can just ask for you, just to save you a bit of time? That can be really powerful. Like, they might ask you something, they might say, oh, ask this technical question. If they don't know it, they're not going to be able to do the job. And that, again, can just save you and them lots of time. Known companies to headhunt from. People don't tend to give you this, but, they might say, oh, actually, we have hired a couple people from X company. I know they use our tech stack. So, yeah, if you can go after those guys, that would be fantastic. And then you've immediately got a company you can just headhunt from. Contact all the people there. If you get one person from there, you pretty much got a guaranteed placement. Had it happen to me before. One fintech company wanted people from a specific retail company. And I managed to get one person from there, and they got the job straight away. They didn't even have to do the tech test, because they were like, well, we know you can do the job. I've got a friend who used to work with you guys. He used to work with this person, and just offer him the job. He's so good. So that can happen. So ask a question of that. Selling points of the company. Why do they work there? Obviously, that helps you sell the company better. What's the interview process? With this, again, it's quite basic, but you just need to delve deeper into it. So, for example, with the technical test, like, try and find out how long the technical test is, a few more details. Is it a take-home? Is it a paired programming exercise? Is it online? How long are you expecting people to spend on it? Is it timed? Is it untimed? With the first stage interview, how long does that usually take? With the final stage interview, how long does that usually take? Who's going to be on these calls as well? Like, it's always good to find out who the decision makers are, because it saves you asking further down in the process. And also, again, super important, confirm SLAs. Like, a lot of recruiters don't do this, but try and get your, especially if you're like confident you can find candidates. Like, if it's a quantity role and you can pretty much get candidates in 48 hours, it's really good to confirm some SLAs, which are service level agreements. So, like CV feedback time. You need to give me feedback on a CV I send via email within 24 hours. You need to give me interview feedback within 24 hours. You need to progress a candidate within 48 hours. We need to get an offer out within 24 hours of the final stage interview. Stuff like that. Try and get as many of those things as possible. And it just really helps massively during the process, because again, it will save you time, makes you look professional. The candidate experience is fantastic because it's all slick, and the hiring manager knows what's expected of him. Like, if he hasn't responded to you in 24 hours via an email and you agreed he would, like, you have every right to call him up and be like, mate, what's going on? Like, you know, we need to get this sorted. I'm trying to help you here. Especially if you're working to retainers, like, you should have service level agreements agreed already, because if they're working on retained, typically I work to like 24 hours CV feedback, and it was amazing. Like, honestly, the shift was so cool, because I went from like sometimes having to wait a week for CV feedback to like the hiring manager coming back to me within 2 hours. It was amazing, and it sped everything up. So try and get SLAs in place. CV feedback time is pretty important. Just try and get all that agreed. And that's pretty much it, guys, really. That's how you do a really in-depth job qualification call. Hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.